She learned the weight of silence on Christmas Eve, when the people who were supposed to love her chose comfort over her name. The apartment was dark. Not the cozy kind of dark that comes with twinkling lights and cinnamon candles, but the hollow kind that settles in when you've stopped pretending anyone cares if you're home. Michelle sat on the floor with her back against the couch, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the phone she'd turned face down 3 hours ago. The screen had lit up twice. Both times, it wasn't an apology. It was a reminder that her younger sister's engagement dinner was happening without her. The dinner she'd helped pay for. The dinner she was uninvited from because her presence might make things awkward. Awkward for who? For the boss who fired her to protect his reputation after she refused to lie about what she saw? For the family that smiled through gritted teeth and said they understood, but maybe it was best if she sat this one out? For the man who promised he loved her, then texted 3 days later saying he needed space until things settled down? She pressed her palms into her eyes until she saw stars. Outside, snow fell in thick, lazy spirals, blanketing the city in a silence that felt like judgment. The world was celebrating. She was erased. And the worst part? She'd let it happen. She'd nodded. She'd smiled. She'd said, "I understand." Because that's what good girls do. They swallow the knife and thank you for the lesson. But tonight, something in her chest felt different. Not broken. Burning. The knock came at 11:53 p.m. 3 sharp raps against the door, deliberate and unapologetic, cutting through the quiet like a blade through silk. Michelle's breath caught. No one knocked at midnight on Christmas Eve. No one who mattered knew where she lived anymore. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. The knock came again, heavier this time, and with it came a pull she couldn't name. Not in her head. Deeper. In her ribs. In the space behind her sternum where grief had been living rent-free for weeks. Her body stood before her mind gave permission. She crossed the small living room, fingers trembling as they hovered over the lock. Through the peephole, she saw him. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Dressed in black, snowflakes melting against the dark wool of his coat. His face was half-shadowed, carved with the kind of sharp, unforgiving beauty that didn't ask for permission to devastate you. His eyes, pale, piercing, impossibly focused, stared directly at the peephole as if he could see through it. As if he knew she was there, holding her breath, wondering if she was brave enough or foolish enough to let him in. She should have walked away. She should have called someone. But who? The family that forgot her? The friends who chose sides? The man who said he loved her conditionally? Her hand turned the lock. The door opened, and the cold rushed in like a confession. He didn't smile. Didn't apologize for the hour or the intrusion. He just stood there, storm-eyed and silent, looking at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his entire life. "Michelle," he said. Not a question. A certainty. Her name in his mouth felt like a match struck in the dark. "Who are you?" Her voice came out smaller than she wanted, but she didn't step back. Didn't give him the satisfaction of fear. "Someone who's been looking for you." His voice was low, rough-edged, the kind of voice that didn't waste words. "And someone who needs your help." She laughed. It was sharp and bitter and entirely humorless. "You've got the wrong person. I don't help anyone anymore." His jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might leave. But then he did something she didn't expect. He stepped closer, just to the threshold, and the air between them changed. Thickened. Charged. Her pulse kicked up, rabbit-fast, and she hated that her body recognized something her mind refused to accept. "You don't know me," he said quietly, "but I know you. I know you were fired for refusing to lie. I know your family chose their comfort over your truth. I know the man you loved left you when you needed him most." His eyes burned into hers, unflinching. "And I know you're sitting in the dark on Christmas Eve wondering if anyone would notice if you disappeared." The words hit like a fist to the chest. She sucked in a breath, sharp and shaky, her hands curling into fists at her sides. "How do you?" "Because I've been where you are." His voice softened, just barely, but it was enough to crack something inside her. And because tonight I need you to let me in. Not because you trust me, but because you're tired of being alone. She should have slammed the door. Should have told him to go to hell. But the truth was a cruel, aching thing, and he'd just spoken it out loud. So she stepped aside. He walked in like he belonged there, like he'd crossed 100 thresholds just to find this one. The door clicked shut behind him, and the apartment, which had felt 2 empty moments ago, suddenly felt too small. He turned to face her, and in the dim light from the street lamp outside, she saw him clearly for the first time. The sharp line of his jaw, the faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow, the way his hands flexed at his sides, like he was holding something back. Power, maybe. Or pain. "My name is Alex," he said. "And I'm not here to save you." She crossed her arms, defenses rising like walls. "Then why are you here?" His gaze held hers, steady and unyielding. "Because you're the only one who can save me." The silence stretched between them, heavy and electric. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white. Inside, something shifted. Something inevitable and terrifying and utterly unavoidable. Michelle didn't know it yet, but the loneliest night of her life was about to become the beginning of everything. And the man standing in her living room, this stranger with storm eyes and a voice like gravel and grace, wasn't just asking for shelter. He was offering her a choice. To stay small, stay safe, stay silent. Or to step into the fire and see what she was truly made of. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. Christmas had arrived. And with it, a reckoning neither of them was ready for. But fate, as it turned out, didn't care about readiness. It only cared about truth. If you felt that pull, that ache, that flicker of something more, don't let it fade. Subscribe to Cindy's Wolfheart stories, because we're just getting started. And trust me, you'll want to see what happens next. Michelle didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stood there with her arms wrapped tight around herself, like she could hold her ribs in place if her heart decided to break again. Alex watched her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Not the leering kind of attention she'd learned to deflect in crowded bars or corporate meetings. This was different. Sharper. Like he was reading the parts of her she kept hidden even from herself. "You can't save anyone," she said finally, her voice flat and tired. "So whatever this is, whatever you think I can do for you, you're wrong." He didn't argue. Didn't try to convince her with pretty words or empty promises. He just shrugged off his coat and draped it over the back of her chair, snow still clinging to the shoulders, melting into dark, wet patches. The gesture was casual, familiar, like he'd done it 100 times before in a home that wasn't his. "You're right," he said, moving toward her small kitchenette without asking permission. He opened a cabinet, found a glass, filled it with water from the tap. "You can't save me from what's coming. No one can." He set the glass on the counter between them. "An offering. Or maybe a test. But you can help me survive it." Michelle's joy tightened. "I don't even know you." "You know enough." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and for the first time since he'd walked in, something like exhaustion flickered across his face. "You know I'm not supposed to be here. You know I'm risking something by standing in this room with you. And you know," his eyes locked onto hers, pale and unrelenting, "that the moment I said your name, something in you recognized me." She wanted to deny it. Wanted to tell him he was insane, that she felt nothing, that he was just another man with too much confidence and too little sense. But her body betrayed her. Her pulse hammered in her throat. Her skin felt too tight, too hot, like something inside her was waking up after years of sleep. "That's not," she shook her head, stepping back. "That's not possible. Isn't it?" He pushed off the counter, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. He stopped just short of touching her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him, close enough to see the faint silver ring around his irises. "Tell me you don't feel it, Michelle. Tell me your chest didn't tighten the second I said your name. Tell me you're not wondering why a man you've never met feels like someone you've been waiting for your entire life. Her breath hitched. She hated him for saying it out loud. Hated him for naming the thing she'd been trying to ignore since the door opened. "Who are you?" she whispered, and this time it wasn't a question. It was a plea. Alex's expression softened, just barely, but the weight in his eyes remained. "I'm the alpha of a pack you've never heard of. I run a city that doesn't know I exist. I've spent the last 10 years keeping my power hidden because the moment people know what I am, they either try to use me or destroy me." He paused, his gaze dropping to the floor, then back to her. "And I'm cursed to recognize my mate only once a year. On the loneliest night of the year. When the bond is strong enough to hurt before it heals." The word hit her like a slap. Mate. She'd heard the term before. In stories. In the kind of fantasy novels she used to read before real life got too heavy to escape from. But hearing it here, in her tiny apartment, from a man who looked like he carried the weight of the world in his chest. "No." She stepped back, shaking her head. "No. That's not real. That's not. I didn't come here to claim you." His voice was rough, urgent, like he needed her to understand before she bolted. "I came here because I had nowhere else to go. Because the prophecy that binds me says if I accept the bond too soon, everything I've built will fall apart. My pack will fracture. The city I've protected will burn. And the woman I love," his voice cracked, just slightly, and the sound of it broke something in her chest, "will become a symbol. A target. A sacrifice." Michelle's hands trembled. She pressed them flat against her thighs, willing herself to stay upright, to stay present, to not collapse under the weight of what he was saying. "So why are you here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "If being near me puts me in danger, why knock on my door?" Alex looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Like she was the answer and the question and the truth he'd been running from. "Because I'm tired of pretending I don't need you," he said quietly. "Because the curse says I can only feel the bond one night a year, and every other day, I have to live with the memory of what it felt like to stand this close to you and not be able to stay." He exhaled, slow and shaky, and for a moment, he looked like a man on the edge of breaking. "And because tonight, for the first time in my life, I'm choosing honesty over survival." The room went still. The only sound was the faint hum of the radiator and the distant wail of a siren somewhere in the city. Michelle stared at him, this stranger who wasn't a stranger, this man who'd walked into her life at the exact moment she'd given up on being found. She thought about the family that forgot her, the job that used her, the man who left her. She thought about all the ways she'd been chosen last, chosen wrong, or not chosen at all. And here was someone telling her she was his fate. "I don't want to be someone's destiny," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "I don't want to be the thing you sacrifice for. I don't want to be another piece in someone else's prophecy." Alex's jaw clenched. He nodded, once, like he'd expected that answer. Like he understood. "Then don't be," he said simply. "Be the woman who tells destiny to go to hell. Be the one who rewrites the story." He stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "I'm not asking you to accept the bond. I'm asking you to let me stay tonight. Just tonight. So I don't have to spend Christmas alone, wondering if I made the right choice by staying away." Her defenses cracked. Not shattered. Not broken. Just cracked enough to let the truth slip through. She was tired. Tired of being strong. Tired of being alone. Tired of pretending she didn't ache for something more. One night, she said, her voice rough. "You stay tonight. And tomorrow you leave." Alex's shoulders sagged, just slightly, like he'd been holding his breath for hours. One night, he agreed. But they both knew it was a lie. Because the bond between them wasn't something that could be locked away at sunrise. It was already there, humming beneath their skin, pulling them toward each other like gravity, like magnetism, like the kind of inevitability that didn't ask for permission. Michelle turned away, moving toward the couch, putting distance between them before she did something stupid. Like believe him. Like trust him. Like let herself hope that maybe, just maybe, this time she wouldn't be chosen last. Alex stayed where he was, silent and watchful, his presence filling the room like smoke, like heat, like a storm waiting to break. Outside, the snow continued to fall. And inside, two people who'd spent their lives running from connection stood on opposite sides of a room, terrified and tempted and tethered by something neither of them could name. But fate didn't care about fear. It only cared about truth. And the truth was this: the loneliest night of the year had just become the beginning of everything. Michelle didn't sleep. She sat curled on the couch, a blanket pulled over her legs, staring at the man who'd made himself comfortable on the floor across from her. Alex hadn't asked for a pillow or complained about the hardwood. He just settled against the wall, legs stretched out, arms crossed over his chest, eyes closed like he could actually rest with a stranger 3 feet away. But she knew he wasn't sleeping either. His breathing was too controlled, too measured. He was listening, waiting, giving her space while somehow still holding all the air in the room hostage. The radiator hissed and clanked, filling the silence with its familiar broken rhythm. Outside, the city had gone quiet, buried under snow and the weight of a holiday that had forgotten her. She should have kicked him out. Should have called someone, though who, she didn't know. Should have done anything except sit here, watching the rise and fall of his chest, wondering why his presence felt less like an intrusion and more like the first full breath she'd taken in weeks. Her mind drifted, slipping past the present, past the hurt, into the memories she'd been trying to outrun. She'd always been different. Not in the cute, quirky way people claimed when they wanted to feel special. Different in the way that made people uncomfortable. The way that made them step back, cross their arms, ask questions with their eyes that their mouths were too polite to say out loud. When she was 7, she made a boy's nose bleed just by staring at him. He'd been pulling her hair, laughing with his friends, and she'd felt something hot and sharp bloom in her chest. She'd looked at him, really looked, and his face had gone white. Blood had poured from his nostrils, thick and fast, and he'd stumbled backward, crying for his mother. No one believed her when she said she didn't touch him. When she was 12, she'd gotten angry at her father during an argument about grades, about expectations, about why she couldn't just be normal. The lights in the kitchen had flickered, then exploded, one by one, raining glass across the tile. Her father had stared at her like she was something dangerous. Something wrong. Her mother had whispered to her later, hands trembling as she smoothed Michelle's hair, "You have to learn to control it, baby. You have to keep it inside, or people will be afraid." But no one told her what it was. By 16, she'd learned to bury it deep. Learned to smile when she wanted to scream. Learned to swallow the heat in her chest until it turned cold and manageable. She became the good daughter, the responsible one, the girl who paid her sister's bills and showed up early and stayed late and never, ever caused trouble. She thought if she was useful enough, if she was quiet enough, people would love her. But useful wasn't the same as loved. And quiet wasn't the same as safe. 3 months ago, everything had unraveled. She'd been working late, filing reports for her boss, a man with a corner office and a reputation built on other people's silence. She'd stumbled across emails she wasn't supposed to see. Messages that proved he'd been skimming funds, manipulating contracts, blaming his assistants when audits came knocking. She'd confronted him privately, professionally. She'd given him a chance to make it right. He'd smiled, thanked her for her discretion, then fired her 2 days later, citing budget cuts and performance issues that had never existed before. Her family had been sympathetic at first. Then her mother had called, voice tight and careful, asking if maybe Michelle had misunderstood. If maybe she'd overreacted. Her sister had suggested she apologize, just to smooth things over, because the boss's wife was on the charity board with their aunt, and it was causing tension. Tension. As if Michelle's integrity was the problem. As if telling the truth was the thing that needed to be managed. She'd gone to her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend now, hoping for support, for solidarity, for someone to tell her she'd done the right thing. He'd held her while she cried, kissed her forehead. Then 3 days later, he'd sent a text. "I think we need space. Just until things settle down. You understand, right?" She understood. She understood that love was conditional. That family was political. That doing the right thing made you a liability, not a hero. So she'd stopped answering calls. Stopped pretending she was okay. Stopped showing up to places where people looked at her with pity or judgment or the kind of awkward discomfort that said they wished she'd just disappear. And tonight, on Christmas Eve, when the world was supposed to be celebrating connection and joy and the magic of not being alone, she'd gotten exactly what she'd wished for. She'd disappeared. Until he knocked. "You're thinking too loud." Michelle's eyes snapped open. Alex was watching her now, head tilted slightly, his gaze steady and unreadable. "I'm not thinking anything," she lied. His mouth curved, just barely. Not quite a smile. More like acknowledgement. "You're thinking about why you're here. Why you're alone. Why the people who were supposed to show up didn't." Her throat tightened. "You don't know me. I know enough." He shifted, leaning forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees. "I know you're angry. I know you're hurt. And I know you're wondering if there's something wrong with you, because if there wasn't, why would everyone keep choosing someone else?" The words landed like stones in her chest, heavy and precise. "Stop," she whispered. "Why?" His voice was soft, but relentless. "Because it's true? Because you've been sitting here for weeks telling yourself the same thing? Because it's none of your business." Her voice cracked, and she hated herself for it. Alex didn't look away. Didn't flinch. "You're right. It's not. But I'm going to tell you something anyway, and you can decide if you want to believe it." She didn't answer. Didn't move. He leaned back against the wall, eyes fixed on hers. "There's nothing wrong with you, Michelle. There's something powerful in you. Something people can sense even if they don't understand it. And that scares them. Because power that can't be controlled, power that doesn't ask for permission, it disrupts things. It makes people uncomfortable. So they try to contain it. Shame it. Convince you it's a flaw instead of a gift." Her hands curled into fists under the blanket. "You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I?" He tilted his head, studying her. "You felt it, haven't you? That heat in your chest when you're angry. That pull when you're scared. You've spent your whole life trying to keep it buried because every time it slipped out, someone told you to stop. To calm down. To be normal." Her breath caught. He saw it. The flicker of recognition. The truth she'd been hiding. "What are you?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Someone who knows what it's like to be dangerous," he said quietly. "And someone who stopped apologizing for it." Silence settled between them, thick and charged. The radiator hissed. The snow continued to fall. Michelle felt something shift inside her. Not breaking. Not healing. Just loosening. Like a knot she'd been holding for years finally had room to breathe. "I don't know how to stop being afraid of it," she admitted, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. Alex's expression softened. "You don't stop being afraid. You just stop letting fear make your decisions." She looked at him, really looked, and saw the truth of it in his eyes. The scars. The exhaustion. The weight of a man who'd carried power and isolation in equal measure. "Why me?" she asked. "If this bond, this curse, whatever it is, why me?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because you're the only person I've ever met who's strong enough to walk away from me." The honesty of it hit her like a punch. She didn't know what to say. Didn't know what to feel. So she just sat there, wrapped in a blanket on the loneliest night of the year, staring at a man who'd walked into her life like a storm and told her the one thing she'd been desperate to hear. "You're not broken. You're just powerful." And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Dawn came slowly, hesitant, like it wasn't sure it was welcome. Michelle woke to pale gray light filtering through the curtains and the smell of coffee she didn't remember making. She sat up, disoriented, the blanket pooling around her waist. Her neck ached from sleeping at an odd angle. Her eyes felt gritty and swollen. Alex stood by the window, a mug in his hand, looking out at the snow-covered street below. He'd rolled up his sleeves, exposing forearms corded with muscle and marked with faint scars that looked old and deliberate. Not accidental. Earned. He turned when he heard her move, and something in his expression shifted. Softened. "You made coffee," she said, her voice rough with sleep. "You didn't have much to work with." He gestured toward the kitchenette. "But I figured you'd want something warm." She stood, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders like armor, and crossed to the counter. The coffee was strong, almost too strong, but it was exactly what she needed. She took a sip, letting the heat settle in her chest, and tried not to think about how domestic this felt. How normal. How dangerous. "We need to leave," Alex said quietly. Her head snapped up. "What?" "There's a place I need to take you. Somewhere you'll understand what I've been trying to tell you." He set his mug down, his movements careful, controlled. "Somewhere you'll see the truth." Michelle's stomach tightened. "I don't." "I know." He held up a hand, stopping her before she could finish. "I know you don't trust me. I know this is insane. But if you want answers, real answers about why you feel the way you do, about what's inside you, you need to come with me." She stared at him, weighing the risk, weighing the fear, weighing the part of her that had been screaming for answers her entire life against the part that just wanted to stay small and safe. "Where?" she asked finally. "North. About an hour outside the city. There's a place in the woods. Old. Sacred. It's been there longer than any of us." His eyes met hers, steady and serious. "And it's the only place where the bond can show you what you are." Her pulse kicked up. "What I am?" He nodded. "You're not just human, Michelle. You never were." They left before the city fully woke. Alex drove in silence, his hands steady on the wheel, his jaw tight with a tension he wouldn't name. Michelle sat in the passenger seat, wrapped in her coat, watching the buildings give way to trees, the noise give way to stillness. She should have been terrified. Should have demanded he turn around. Should have jumped out at a red light and run. But she didn't. Because beneath the fear, beneath the doubt, there was something else. Something that had been waiting for this moment her entire life. The road narrowed, turned to gravel, then dirt. The trees grew denser, older, their branches heavy with snow and shadow. The air felt different here. Thicker. Charged. Alex pulled off onto a barely visible path, the truck bumping over roots and rocks until the forest swallowed them whole. When he finally stopped, they were in a clearing. Michelle stepped out, her breath clouding in the cold, and froze. The place was impossibly still. No birds. No wind. Just the faint hum of something she couldn't name, vibrating beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. In the center of the clearing stood a stone altar, ancient and weathered, covered in symbols she didn't recognize, but somehow understood. Spirals. Crescents. Flames. Around it, trees formed a perfect circle, their trunks carved with marks that glowed faintly in the dim morning light. "What is this place?" she whispered. Alex came to stand beside her, his presence solid and grounding. "It's a threshold. A place where the veil between what we are and what we're meant to be is thin." He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "It's where the first of our kind made their pact with the moon." Michelle's chest tightened. "Our kind. Shifters," he said simply. "Wolves. But not just wolves. Some of us carry something older. Something that predates the packs, the territories, the rules." He paused, his gaze drifting to the altar. "Some of us carry fire." Her breath hitched. Fire. The word echoed in her mind, dragging up memories she'd tried to bury. The lights exploding. The boy's nose bleeding. The heat in her chest that never fully went away. "I'm not," she shook her head, stepping back. "I'm not a shifter. I've never shifted. I don't. Because you were never taught." Alex's voice was calm, patient. Because whoever you came from hid what you were, probably to protect you. But the power doesn't go away just because you ignore it. It just waits. Michelle's hands trembled. She shoved them into her pockets, trying to hold herself together. Why are you telling me this? Because the bond doesn't choose randomly. He turned to face her fully, his pale eyes burning with intensity. It chooses balance. Power that complements power. And you, Michelle, you're not just my mate. You're the one the prophecy warned about. Her stomach dropped. What prophecy? Alex exhaled slowly, like he'd been carrying the weight of this for years. 300 years ago, a seer stood in this clearing and spoke of a woman who would be born with silver fire in her blood. A woman who could either unite the packs or burn them to ash. A woman who would be bonded to an alpha strong enough to stand beside her or foolish enough to try to control her. Michelle's pulse roared in her ears. That's not me. Isn't it? He stepped closer, his voice dropping. You've spent your whole life feeling like you didn't belong. Like you were too much or not enough. Like something inside you was waiting to break free. His gaze held hers, unflinching. That's not coincidence, Michelle. That's destiny. She wanted to scream. Wanted to run. Wanted to tell him he was wrong, that this was insane, that she was just a girl who'd been fired and forgotten and left behind. But the altar pulsed. A low, steady rhythm that matched her heartbeat. The symbols carved into the stone began to glow brighter, silver light spilling across the snow like liquid moonlight. Michelle gasped, stumbling back, but Alex caught her arm, steadying her. Don't fight it, he said quietly. Just let it show you. The light grew, wrapping around her like a cocoon, and suddenly she wasn't in the clearing anymore. She was standing in a memory that wasn't hers. A woman knelt before the altar, her hair long and dark, her eyes blazing silver. Flames danced along her fingertips, not consuming, but alive. Around her, wolves bowed, not in submission, but in reverence. She spoke, her voice echoing across time. The fire will choose its keeper. The keeper will choose her path. And the alpha who stands beside her will either burn with her or be remade. The vision shifted. Michelle saw cities falling. Packs at war. A throne of bone and ash. Then she saw something else, a different path. Wolves standing together. Peace forged not through dominance, but choice. A woman with silver flames, her hand clasped with a man whose eyes burned pale and fierce. The vision shattered. Michelle gasped, collapsing to her knees in the snow, her chest heaving. The altar's glow faded, leaving only silence. Alex knelt beside her, his hand on her shoulder, grounding her. Breathe, he murmured. Just breathe. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face, her body trembling. I saw it. I saw everything. I know. I'm supposed to destroy everything. Her voice broke. Or save it. And I don't even know how. Alex's hand moved to cup her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. You don't have to know yet. You just have to choose not to run. She stared at him, this man who'd walked into her life carrying a curse and a crown, offering her a destiny she'd never asked for. What if I'm not strong enough? She whispered. His eyes softened. Then we'll figure it out together. The clearing was silent. The altar hummed softly, waiting. And Michelle, broken and powerful and terrified, made a choice. She didn't run. They didn't make it back to the truck. The attack came like a shadow splitting from the trees, silent, swift, and brutal. Michelle barely had time to register the movement before Alex shoved her behind him, his body shifting in a blur of motion. Bones cracked and reformed, muscle and fur replacing skin in seconds. Where a man had stood, a massive black wolf now crouched, teeth bared, eyes blazing with protective fury. She stumbled backward, her heart hammering against her ribs, and that's when she saw them. 5 wolves emerged from the tree line, circling the clearing with predatory precision. They were smaller than Alex, leaner, but their eyes held a cold intelligence that made her blood run ice cold. These weren't animals. These were hunters. And they weren't here for him. They were here for her. One of them shifted, a woman with sharp features and hair the color of rust, her expression carved from stone and contempt. She wore dark clothing that blended with the forest, and when she spoke, her voice cut through the frozen air like a blade. "Step aside, Alpha." Her gaze flicked to Alex, dismissive. "This doesn't concern you." Alex's growl rumbled deep and primal, a sound that vibrated through Michelle's chest and made the ground beneath her feet tremble. The woman's lip curled. "Still playing protector? You know what she is. You know what the prophecy says. She's a threat to every pack in the Northern Territories. To your pack." "She's under my protection," Alex snarled, his voice distorted but unmistakable, the words scraping out like gravel and thunder. "Your protection?" The woman laughed, cold and mocking. "You've been hiding for a decade, pretending you're not what you are, and now you want to claim her? The council won't allow it. The elders won't allow it. She's too dangerous to live, and you're too compromised to lead." Michelle's breath came in short, sharp bursts. Her hands tingled, heat gathering beneath her skin, that familiar burn rising in her chest. Not now. Not like this. But her body didn't care what she wanted. "Alex," she whispered, her voice shaking. I don't know how to control it." He didn't turn, didn't take his eyes off the threat, but his voice reached her, steady and sure. "Don't control it. Just trust it." The woman's eyes narrowed. "You feel it, don't you? That fire inside you, begging to break free. That's why you're dangerous. That's why you can't be allowed to bond with him." She took a step forward, her wolves closing in. Silverfire hasn't walked this earth in 3 centuries. The last woman who carried it burned half the Eastern Territories to the ground before she was stopped. "We won't make that mistake again." "I'm not her," Michelle said, her voice stronger than she felt. "No." The woman smiled, sharp and humorless. "You're worse. Because you don't even know what you're capable of." The wolves lunged. Alex met them head-on, a blur of black fur and lethal grace. He moved like violence perfected, like instinct sharpened into art. One wolf went down with a yelp, then another, but they kept coming, coordinated and relentless. The woman stayed back, watching, calculating. And then she looked at Michelle. "You think he's protecting you out of love?" she called over the chaos. "He's protecting you because the prophecy says if you die before the bond is complete, his pack loses its claim to the Northern Territories. You're not his mate, girl. You're a political asset." The words hit harder than any physical blow. Michelle's chest tightened, doubt flooding in, cold and suffocating. Was that true? Was this all just strategy? Power games disguised as destiny? She looked at Alex, at the way he fought, the way he positioned himself between her and every threat, the way his body absorbed blows meant for her. And she remembered the way he'd looked at her last night. The exhaustion in his eyes. The honesty. "I'm tired of pretending I don't need you." No, this wasn't strategy. This was survival. The heat in her chest flared, sudden and overwhelming, and this time she didn't try to bury it. "Alex, move," she shouted. He didn't question. Didn't hesitate. He dove to the side just as silver flames erupted from Michelle's hands, roaring across the clearing in a wave of blinding light and searing heat. The wolves scattered, yelping, their fur singed. The woman threw up her arms, shielding her face, her expression shifting from arrogance to shock. Michelle stood in the center of the clearing, flames dancing along her arms, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The fire didn't burn her. It felt like an extension of herself, wild, furious, and finally free. "Stay back," she warned, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. "I don't want to hurt anyone, but I will if you make me." The woman stared at her, eyes wide, and for the first time, Michelle saw something other than contempt in her gaze. Fear. "You really are her," the woman whispered. The silver flame. "I'm not your enemy," Michelle said, lowering her hands slowly, the flames dimming but not extinguishing. "I don't want to destroy anyone. I just want to be left alone." The woman's jaw tightened. She glanced at her wolves, then back at Michelle. It's not about what you want. It's about what you are. And what you are will tear this world apart, whether you mean to or not. She stepped back, whistling sharply. Her wolves regrouped around her, limping and scorched but alive. This isn't over, she said coldly. The council will hear about this. And when they do, they'll come for you. Both of you. Her gaze cut to Alex, who'd shifted back to human form, bloodied and breathing hard. You've chosen your side, Alpha. Now you'll live with the consequences. They disappeared into the trees as quickly as they'd come, leaving only silence and the acrid smell of burnt fur. Michelle's legs gave out. She collapsed into the snow, the flames extinguishing, her entire body trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. Alex was at her side in an instant, his hands on her shoulders, his face streaked with blood and dirt. Are you hurt? He asked urgently, his eyes scanning her for injuries. She shook her head, unable to speak, tears streaming down her face. Not from pain. From the weight of it all. The power. The prophecy. The choice she'd just made without meaning to. I didn't mean to, she choked out. I didn't. You saved us, he said firmly, cupping her face, forcing her to look at him. You did exactly what you needed to do. She said I'm dangerous. She said I'll destroy everything. She's afraid. His voice was hard, unyielding. And people who are afraid say a lot of things to justify violence. He brushed her hair back, his touch gentle despite the fury still simmering in his eyes. You're not dangerous, Michelle. You're powerful. There's a difference. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that the fire inside her could be something other than destruction. But the woman's words echoed in her mind, cold and sharp. You're worse. Because you don't even know what you're capable of. Alex pulled her to her feet, supporting her weight as they stumbled toward the truck. We need to go. Now. They'll regroup and come back with more. Where? She asked weakly. Somewhere they can't follow. His jaw set. Somewhere I should have taken you from the beginning. They climbed into the truck, Michelle's hands still trembling, the scent of smoke clinging to her skin. As Alex started the engine and pulled back onto the narrow road, she stared out the window at the clearing disappearing behind them. The altar still glowed faintly in the distance, a beacon or a warning. She didn't know which. All she knew was that the world had just declared war on her. And the only person standing between her and annihilation was a man cursed to love her one night a year. One night that had just cost them both everything. They drove for 2 hours in near silence. Michelle watched the landscape blur past, trees giving way to rolling hills, then steep cliffs that dropped away into mist and shadow. Her hands still tingled with residual heat, her body humming with an energy she didn't know how to name or tame. Alex's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his jaw locked tight. Blood had dried along his temple, and his shirt was torn at the shoulder, revealing angry red scratches that should have needed stitches, but were already beginning to heal. Shifter healing. Another reminder that the world she thought she knew had been a carefully constructed lie. Where are we going? She asked finally, her voice hoarse. My territory, he said without looking at her. The place I've kept hidden for the last 10 years. The place no council, no elder, no self-righteous enforcer knows exists. You have a pack? His mouth twitched, something between bitterness and pride. I have people who chose to follow me when the rest of the world wanted me dead or controllable. People who were cast out, hunted, too powerful or too broken to fit into the neat little hierarchies the councils tried to build. He glanced at her briefly. People like you. The words settled heavy in her chest. People like her. Dangerous. Unwanted. Too much. How many? She asked. 43. Families. Lone wolves. A few humans who stumbled into our world and decided to stay. His voice softened slightly. It's not much, but it's ours. She studied his profile, the sharp line of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes never stopped scanning the road ahead for threats. Why did they want you dead? She asked quietly. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Because I refuse to play their game. The councils control territory through fear and tradition. They crown alphas based on bloodlines and brutality, then use them as puppets to maintain power. When I came of age, they expected me to fall in line, to take my father's place, to marry the daughter of another alpha and strengthen their alliances. What did you do?" I walked away. His voice was flat, emotionless, but she heard the cost beneath it. I told them I wouldn't be their weapon, wouldn't lead a pack built on dominance and submission. So they tried to kill me, made it look like a challenge gone wrong. I survived, barely, and disappeared. Michelle's throat tightened. "And you've been hiding ever since." "Not hiding," he corrected. "Building. Creating something different. Something better." He glanced at her again, his pale eyes burning with intensity. "Until last night, when I broke my own rule and came looking for you." "Why?" The question came out raw, desperate. "Why risk everything for someone you don't even know?" Alex pulled off the main road onto a barely visible dirt path, the truck bouncing over ruts and rocks. "Because the curse doesn't just show me who you are. It shows me who you could be. And I saw a woman strong enough to rewrite the rules. Powerful enough to challenge a prophecy. Brave enough to choose her own path, even if it costs her everything." He brought the truck to a stop at the edge of a clearing, and when Michelle looked up, her breath caught. Nestled in the valley below was a village. Small cabins built from stone and timber, smoke curling from chimneys, gardens blanketed in snow. Warm light glowed from windows. Children's laughter echoed faintly on the wind. It looked like a place from a storybook. A place that shouldn't exist in a world of councils and prophecies and women who carried silver fire in their blood. "This is home," Alex said quietly. They were greeted at the edge of the village by a woman who looked like she'd been carved from the forest itself, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark skin and silver-threaded hair pulled back in a thick braid. Her eyes were warm but assessing, taking in Michelle's torn coat and trembling hands with a single glance. "You brought her," the woman said, not a question but an acknowledgement. "I had no choice, Saris," Alex replied, exhaustion finally creeping into his voice. "They found us at the altar." Saris's expression darkened. "How many?" "5. Led by Kira, the council's favorite attack dog." Saris cursed under her breath, then looked at Michelle. "Can you walk, girl, or do I need to carry you?" Michelle straightened despite the exhaustion weighing her down. "I can walk." Saris's mouth curved slightly, approval flickering in her eyes. "Good. Come on then. You look like you haven't eaten in days, and Alex looks like he got his ass handed to him by a garden rake." "Saris," Alex warned. "Save it." She waved him off, already turning toward the village. "Get cleaned up. Feed her. Talk to her. And for the love of the moon, stop looking at her like she's going to disappear if you blink." Michelle felt heat rise to her cheeks, but when she glanced at Alex, he didn't deny it. His cabin was at the far edge of the village, tucked against a hillside with a view of the valley below. Inside, it was sparse but warm wood-burning stove, thick rugs, shelves lined with books and maps. A small kitchen. A single bedroom with a door left open. Alex moved through the space with practiced efficiency, lighting the stove, pulling out bread and cheese and dried meat, setting a kettle to boil. Michelle stood awkwardly in the center of the room, unsure where to put herself, unsure what to do with her hands. "Sit," he said without looking at her. "You're going to fall over if you don't." She sank onto the worn couch near the fire, and the moment she did, the adrenaline drained away, leaving only bone-deep exhaustion. Alex brought her food on a wooden plate, then a mug of tea that smelled like pine and honey. He sat across from her, not eating, just watching. "You should eat too," she said quietly. "I will." But he didn't move. They sat in silence, the fire crackling, the warmth seeping into Michelle's frozen limbs. She ate slowly, mechanically, tasting nothing but needing the fuel. When she finally set the empty plate aside, Alex leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his gaze locked on hers. "I need you to understand something," he said, his voice low and serious. "What happened today, what you did, that's going to change everything. The council won't ignore it. They'll come for you. And when they do, they won't just want you gone. They'll want you broken." A warning to anyone else who dares to carry that kind of power. Michelle's hands curled into fists in her lap. "So what do I do?" "You have two choices." His eyes burned into hers. "You can run. Leave tonight. Disappear somewhere they'll never find you. I'll give you money, resources, a new name. You can walk away from all of this and try to live a quiet life. Or you stay." His voice dropped, rough and raw. "You learn to control the fire. You stand with me and my pack. And when the council comes, you show them that prophecies don't get to decide who lives and who burns." The weight of the choice pressed down on her like a physical thing. Run. Hide. Survive alone. Or stay. Fight. Risk everything. "Why do you care?" she asked, her voice breaking. "You barely know me. Why does it matter if I stay or go?" Alex stood, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. He knelt in front of her, his hands hovering near hers but not touching, giving her space to choose. "Because I've spent 10 years building a place where people like us don't have to hide what we are," he said quietly. "And every single person in this village chose to be here. Chose to stand against a world that told them they were too dangerous, too broken, too much." His eyes held hers, unflinching. "I'm not asking you to stay for me, Michelle. I'm asking you to stay for yourself. Because you deserve a place where you don't have to apologize for the fire inside you." Tears burned in her eyes, blurring his face. "What if I hurt someone? What if I lose control? Then we'll figure it out." His voice was steady, certain. "Together." She looked at him, this man who'd walked into her life at the loneliest moment, who'd shown her a prophecy and a power and a choice she'd never asked for. This man who was offering her something no one else ever had. A place to belong. Not despite what she was, but because of it. "I don't know how to be what you need me to be," she whispered. "I don't need you to be anything." He reached up slowly, carefully, and brushed a tear from her cheek. "I just need you to be honest. With me. With yourself. About what you want." The fire crackled. The wind howled softly outside. And Michelle made a choice. "I want to stay," she said, her voice trembling but certain. "I want to learn. I want to fight." Something fierce and bright flared in Alex's eyes. "Then you stay." He stood, offering her his hand. She took it. And when his fingers closed around hers, warm and solid and real, she felt something shift inside her. Not the bond. Not the prophecy. Just trust. Fragile and new and terrifying. But real. 3 days passed like a held breath. Michelle trained with Saris in the mornings, learning to call the fire without fear, learning to shape it, to direct it, to let it burn without consuming her. Her body ached in new ways, muscles she didn't know she had screaming in protest. But the fire listened. Slowly. Reluctantly. It listened. In the afternoons, Alex taught her about the pack. The histories. The politics. The delicate balance of power that kept his village hidden and safe. She met the others, families who'd fled persecution, lone wolves who'd been cast out for refusing to submit, humans who'd stumbled into the supernatural world and chosen to stay. They were wary of her at first. Watchful. But they didn't treat her like a threat. They treated her like someone who'd finally come home. At night, she and Alex sat by the fire, talking until the words ran dry and the silence became comfortable. He told her about his childhood, about the father who'd tried to mold him into a weapon, about the day he'd walked away from everything he was supposed to inherit. She told him about the family that forgot her, the job that used her, the man who left when things got hard. And slowly, carefully, the walls between them began to crumble. On the 3rd night, as the village settled into sleep, Alex walked her back to the small cabin Saris had given her at the edge of the clearing. Snow fell softly around them, muffling their footsteps. "You're getting stronger," he said, his breath clouding in the cold. "I feel like I'm barely keeping up," she admitted. "You're doing more than keeping up." He stopped at her door, turning to face her. "You're thriving." The way he looked at her made her chest tighten. Not with fear. With something warmer. Something dangerous. "Alex," she started, but she didn't know how to finish. He stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "I know," he said softly. "I feel it too. The bond. The pull. The thing they'd been dancing around since the moment he knocked on her door. The curse," she whispered. "It's only supposed to work one night a year." "It is." His hand lifted, hesitating, then brushed a strand of hair from her face. "But this isn't the curse, Michelle. This is choice." Her breath caught. Before she could respond, before she could think, his mouth was on hers. The kiss was slow and deliberate, nothing like the desperate, consuming thing she'd expected. It was careful, reverent. Like he was memorizing the shape of her, the taste of her, the way she fit against him. She kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer, and the fire inside her didn't flare in warning. It settled, calmed, like it had finally found its match. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Alex rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me tonight," he murmured. "Not because of the bond. Not because of the prophecy. Just because I don't want to let you go yet." She should have said no. Should have been careful. Should have protected herself from the inevitable hurt. But she was tired of should have. "Okay," she whispered. She didn't see the betrayal coming. They woke tangled together, sunlight streaming through the window. The fire in the hearth burned down to embers. Alex's arm was wrapped around her waist, his breathing slow and even, and for the first time in months, Michelle felt safe. Then the shouting started. They were dressed and out the door in seconds, running toward the center of the village where a crowd had gathered. Sarah stood in the middle, her expression carved from stone, and beside her, Michelle's stomach dropped. Her sister. Evelyn stood there in a tailored coat and polished boots, looking entirely out of place among the rough-hewn cabins and snow-covered ground. Her eyes widened when she saw Michelle, something like relief flashing across her face. "Bree, thank God," Evelyn breathed, stepping forward. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Michelle froze, her mind racing. "How did you find me? Does it matter?" Evelyn's voice cracked, tears brimming in her eyes. "You disappeared. No one knew where you were. Mom's been beside herself." "I've been," she broke off, shaking her head. "I just need you to come home." "Home?" Michelle's voice came out flat, cold. "The home that uninvited me from Christmas? The home that told me I was making things awkward?" Evelyn flinched. "That was a mistake. We were wrong. I was wrong." She glanced around at the watching faces, then back at Michelle. "But you can't stay here. These people, Bree, they're dangerous." "Dangerous?" Michelle laughed, sharp and bitter. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "I know enough." Evelyn's expression hardened. "I know they're criminals. Fugitives. I know the man you're with is wanted by 6 territories for defying council law." Her gaze cut to Alex, disgust flickering in her eyes. "And I know he's using you." "That's not true," Michelle said, her voice shaking. "Isn't it?" Evelyn pulled out her phone, holding it up so Michelle could see the screen. It was a document. Official. Stamped with a seal Michelle didn't recognize. A bounty. For the Silver Flame. For the woman prophesied to destroy the Northern Territories. Alive or neutralized. Reward, territorial claim, and council seat. Michelle's blood turned to ice. "They're not protecting you," Evelyn said quietly. "They're using you as leverage. If Alex claims you as his mate, his pack gets territorial rights. Power. Resources. You're not a person to him, Bree. You're a bargaining chip." "That's a lie," Alex snarled, stepping forward. But Evelyn didn't back down. "Then why didn't you tell her about the bounty? Why didn't you tell her that every pack in the region is looking for her?" That the council put a price on her head the moment she manifested. Michelle turned to Alex, her heart hammering. Did you know? His jaw clenched. Yes. The word was a knife between her ribs. You knew, she repeated, her voice breaking. You knew there was a bounty, and you didn't tell me. I was protecting you, he said urgently. If you knew, you would have run. And they would have found you. Alone. Unprotected. So you lied. I didn't lie. You let me believe I had a choice. Her voice cracked, raw and furious. You let me believe this was about more than politics and power and your territorial claim. It is more, he said desperately. Michelle, listen to me. No. She stepped back, shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. I'm done listening. I'm done being used. Bree, please, Evelyn said softly, reaching out. Come home. Let me help you. Michelle looked at her sister, the sister who'd asked her to sit out Christmas, who'd chosen comfort over loyalty, who'd somehow found a hidden village in the middle of nowhere. How did you really find me? Michelle asked quietly. Evelyn hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. They sent you, Michelle whispered. The council. They sent you to bring me in. Evelyn's face crumpled. They said they'd protect you. They said if you came willingly, they'd help you control the fire. They promised. They promised you something too, didn't they? Michelle's voice was hollow. What was it? Money? Status? A way to fix the family reputation I ruined. Evelyn's silence was answer enough. Michelle felt something inside her break. Not shatter. Just crack. A clean, final split. Get out, she said quietly. Bree. Get out. The fire flared along her hands, silver and blinding, and Evelyn stumbled back, fear finally breaking through her careful mask. Sarah stepped forward, her voice hard. You heard her. Leave. Now. And tell your council that if they want her, they'll have to go through all of us. Evelyn looked at Michelle one last time, something like regret in her eyes. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the trees. The village was silent. Michelle stood in the center of the clearing, fire dancing along her arms, tears streaming down her face, her entire body shaking with rage and grief and betrayal. Alex reached for her. She pulled away. Don't, she whispered. Just don't. And then she ran. She ran into the forest, away from the village, away from the people who'd lied to her, away from the sister who'd sold her out and the man who'd kept the truth from her. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs gave out, and when she finally collapsed in the snow, the fire erupted from her in a wave of silver fury. Trees blackened. Snow melted. The air itself screamed. And Michelle, broken and powerful and utterly alone, let the fire consume everything. Everything except her. The council came at dawn. Michelle felt them before she saw them, a disturbance in the air, a pressure that made her ears ring and her chest tighten. She'd spent the night in the forest, surrounded by scorched earth and melted snow, the fire finally quiet inside her. Not gone. Just waiting. She stood as they emerged from the tree line. 20 wolves, maybe more, flanking a group of men and women in formal robes bearing council insignias. At their center walked an older man with silver hair and eyes like winter, cold, calculating, absolute. Behind them, bound and bloodied, Alex stumbled forward, held between two massive wolves. His face was bruised, his lips split, but his eyes burned with fury when they found hers. No, Michelle breathed, the fire sparking to life in her palms. Ah, there she is, the silver-haired man said, his voice smooth and pleasant. The silver flame. The woman who'll burn the world or save it, depending on which story you believe. Let him go, Michelle said, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. Let him go. The man laughed softly. Child, he's a criminal. A deserter. A man who's spent a decade undermining council authority and harboring fugitives. He doesn't get to walk away just because you've developed feelings for him. This isn't about him. This is about you being afraid of me. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. We're not afraid. We're practical. Power like yours, unchecked, uncontrolled, it's a threat to everyone. But we're willing to offer you a choice. He gestured expansively. Come with us. Train under council supervision. Learn to use your gift for the good of all packs. In exchange, we'll spare his life and the lives of everyone in his pitiful little village. And if I refuse? Then we eliminate the threat. His voice hardened. All of it. Michelle's heart hammered. She looked at Alex, saw the desperate plea in his eyes. Not for himself. For his people. Don't do it, Alex rasped. Don't let them cage you. The silver-haired man nodded, and one of the wolves struck Alex across the face. He went down hard, blood spattering the snow. The fire inside Michelle roared to life. Stop, she said quietly, and the word carried across the clearing like a command from something ancient and terrible. The air shimmered. The ground trembled. Every wolf in the clearing dropped to their knees, whimpering, unable to resist the power radiating from her. The council members stumbled back, fear finally cracking their composed masks. Michelle walked forward, flames dancing along her skin, her eyes blazing silver. You want to know what I'm capable of? You want to see the prophecy fulfilled? She raised her hands, and the fire exploded outward in a circle, a wall of silver flame that surrounded them all. Not burning, just present. Undeniable. I could end this right now, she said, her voice echoing with something that wasn't quite her own. I could burn every single one of you to ash, and no one would ever know what happened. The prophecy says I'll either unite the packs or destroy them. You've already decided I'm destruction. So why shouldn't I prove you right? The silver-haired man's face had gone pale. You wouldn't dare. Wouldn't I? She stepped closer, and he flinched. You've hunted me. Betrayed me. Used my own family against me. You've beaten a man whose only crime was offering me shelter. And now you want me to believe you'll show mercy if I surrender. Silence. Heavy and absolute. Then Alex's voice, rough but strong. Michelle. Don't become what they fear. Become what they'll never understand. She looked at him, bloodied and defiant, and something in her chest settled. He was right. She lowered her hands, and the flames pulled back, condensing into a single point of light above her palm. I'm not your weapon, she said quietly. And I'm not your sacrifice. I'm done letting other people decide what I am. She turned to the council. You want unity? Here's my offer. Alex's pack gets territorial recognition. Full autonomy. And I train on my terms with people I trust, not under your control. Her eyes hardened. In exchange, I won't burn your territories to the ground. The silver-haired man's jaw worked. That's not how this works. It is now. She let the fire flare once, bright and blinding. Because if you come for me, if you come for him, if you come for anyone I've chosen to protect, I won't just burn your territories. I'll burn your legacy. Your power. Everything you've built on fear and control. She released Alex with a gesture, the wolves holding him collapsing as her power washed over them. He staggered to her side, and she caught him, steadying him. This is your one chance, Michelle said to the council. Accept it, or test me. Your choice. The silver-haired man stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he bowed his head. The council will consider your terms. No. Her voice was steel. The council will accept them. Now. He swallowed. Agreed. The fire vanished. The air cleared. And Michelle stood in the center of scorched earth, a man at her side, and a power inside her that had finally found its purpose. Not destruction. Choice. The village celebrated that night. Not because the danger was over, it wasn't. But because for the first time, they'd chosen their own fate and survived. Michelle stood at the edge of the gathering, watching families dance, children laugh, wolves and humans alike sharing food and stories and hope. Alex found her there, his bruises already fading, his hand reaching for hers. You rewrote the prophecy, he said softly. We rewrote it, she corrected. Together. He pulled her close, and she let herself lean into him, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, belonging didn't have to hurt. What happens now? She asked. Now. He smiled, tired but genuine. Now we build something better. Something worth fighting for. She looked up at him, this man who'd knocked on her door when the world forgot her, who'd shown her that power didn't have to mean destruction, that destiny could be challenged, that love could be chosen, not just fated. I'm still scared, she admitted. Good, he said. Means you're smart. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. But you're not alone anymore. Remember that. The snow began to fall again, soft and clean, covering the scorched earth with new white. And Michelle, who'd spent Christmas alone and broken, stood surrounded by people who'd chosen her, held by a man who'd risked everything for her, carrying a fire that would never be caged again. The prophecy hadn't been wrong. She would change everything. Just not the way anyone expected. Would you have chosen her side? Or would you have feared her too? Is she a hero, or just a woman who refused to let the world tell her what burning was for? If this story lit something inside you, something fierce and wild and unafraid, then subscribe to Cindy's Wolfheart Stories. Because here, we tell tales where destiny doesn't arrive wrapped in ribbons. It arrives rewritten. Where power kneels. Where love demands courage. And where broken people dare to transform the shape of fate together. Hit that subscribe button. Because her story? It's just beginning.